Joining me now to discuss is Michael Allen. He's a member of the National Security Council, was a member in the George W. Bush White House, former Majority Staff Director of the House Intelligence Committee. Good to have you on, Michael. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
I wonder if you could begin there. The point I was just discussing with Nick was, which is, what is the level of U.S. influence right now on this crisis? The U.S. attempted to avoid a broader war by bringing the sides together for a 21-day ceasefire that appears to be all but dead now in the wake of this strike. Does the U.S. have influence over, well, let's begin with the Israeli Prime Minister?
Jim, I don't really think we have a lot of influence right now. And it's not just because President Biden, as we would say in the United States, is a lame duck. I was struck by what the earlier reporter said about the sweep of history. I think the administration could have read the room better. When there's been an enormous attack from Gaza, the overwhelming sentiment that I noticed in Israel, especially on visits, was that they felt like they needed to reestablish their deterrence, because clearly Iran's proxies had no pause about coming in and trying to attack them. And I believe that over time, Netanyahu made the calculation that the state of Israel can't live with another genocidal terrorist organization on another border, in this case, the northern border. So, I mean, it's great that the administration has tried so hard. Ceasefire and diplomacy is ultimately the way to go. But I think Israel just felt like they really needed to do more than just mow the grass, as they say this time. They need to try and root and branch some of these terrorist organizations from their hiding places.
Let me ask you, from a strategic perspective, has Israel accomplished that, right? Because in Gaza, the intention post-October 7th was to destroy Hamas. It has certainly depleted Hamas, but Hamas remains, and the Hamas leader is still alive, though presumably hiding in the tunnels under there. Hezbollah is bigger. It's spread out more in a larger country, larger territory. It's got more tunnels, more missiles, longer range, etc. From a strategic perspective, do these operations, and I should say ongoing operations, do they destroy or just weaken these groups for a time? In other words, can they recover?
I think they can definitely recover, especially with sort of the ideology in the Middle East and the way things are going. But Hezbollah in particular, we're just going to have to see how effective the Israelis have been in the last 10 days. Of course, you've seen everything from a commando raid to take out a drone factory embedded inside of a mountain, the pager attacks, and now this. We'll have to see just how much Hezbollah has been degraded. I think the Israelis have got a big fight ahead of them, especially if they go in with tanks. But I do feel like they needed to do more. They needed to try to substantially degrade these terrorist organizations instead of just trying to strategically blow up some missile sites from time to time. It's high risk, but I felt like it's what was called for if you get inside the mind of the Israelis and examine the way they felt after October 7th.
Clearly, Hezbollah has suffered devastating blows here. According to Israel, its leader is now dead. Thousands of Hezbollah fighters were struck and injured, some killed in that pager attack. And you've had numerous weapons depots destroyed. In addition to that, you had Iran's attempted massive attack in April of this year, those dozens of drones and missiles that was neutralized before they hit the target. Is it possible, and I certainly don't want to underestimate the capabilities of either Iran or Hezbollah, but is it possible that their threat to Israel was overstated, right? I mean, that Israel has a greater ability to neutralize that threat than we knew prior to these recent weeks and months?
No, I totally agree with you. When you think about just how effective the United States and its allies were, along with Israel in April, I think that surprised a lot of us. I think we would have thought that more of the drones or cruise missiles from Iran would have gotten through. Instead, they had a high interception rate. And I know that is what is something that the Iranians are dealing with a certain amount of consternation this morning. They know they need to hit back.
Yeah.
They're not sure they want to have a repeat of what they tried last April and be seen as losing. So it's definitely something that is enormous and something that the Israelis, along with the United States, have a real advantage over Iran over. So ball is in Iran's court. What are they going to do? Are they going to try to hit something in Israel themselves, or just continue to use proxies, not only in the Middle East, but maybe against embassies around the world?
Yeah, it's a good point. That were they to attempt something and that be thwarted as well, that gets to the diminution of their own deterrent effect. One might guess. Michael Allen, I appreciate hearing your analysis. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.